Today we've been organizing a whole bunch of stuff here up at the cabin, bringing in more lumber like shiplap and beams, and I just got the wood for my garden for the raised beds. We've been having such a warm streak. It's going to be in the 80s here this week and full sun with hardly any clouds in the sky. Just kind of almost a taste of summer. We got all that up here, but there are a few steps that we have to do before we can get the garden going. I mentioned this before, but there were a few hardy raspberry bushes growing where the garden will be this year, so I had to take them out with the primary goal of moving them, but of course trying to keep them alive. There's no doubt some of the root ball got a little bit damaged, but raspberry bushes are really robust and resilient and can withstand a lot. So I got out what I could. It's really a challenge because the soil here, and this plays into why I'm making raised beds, the soil here is so dense and rooty, all sizes of roots, small and large, just so entangled and almost impossible to even get a shovel in sometimes. So like I said, I got what I could. There's 3 bushes, so I moved them over to the back side of one of the rock walls we have here. And since they can grow pretty profusely and get expansive, that whole area is just going to be filled with raspberry bushes as they continue to get bigger over time, and we'll just be able to go pick so many raspberries from them, which I'm really looking forward to. To assist them with the transplant, I dug out a space that was double the size of the root ball horizontally. You don't want to go double the depth because then the plant will be too far under the ground and will probably not survive, but you want to give them plenty of good space. And then I layered some compost. We had a huge truckload delivered here this year, so I took some from that and layered it over the whole. And then you want to get that really saturated with water, so I walked over to the little stream that is going on the property and just filled up a bucket for each plant and put some water in prior to putting the raspberry bush in, and then after I had covered it back up with more compost and soil. And after that, you just step around the plant a little bit, kind of lock it in place, and then I give them a little more water too. And with all this bright, warm, sunny weather this week, I think they're going to do just fine. Which brings me to step 2, which is going to be leveling out that garden area and filling it in with some compost and rocks and whatever I can here, just evening it all out so the beds will sit nicely. It's getting really real and exciting. The seedlings are definitely ready to come out here and experience the great outdoors. I can't wait to see them take off once they hit the soil and get all this new nutrients. So there's definitely steps being made. And we're ahead of last year because the greenhouse was built around this time, and then we put things in a while after. Just feels really good to be getting productive with the garden setup and moving closer to that date where I can bring everything up here. And Kyle is inside the cabin right now working on some electrical projects and making sure everything's running smoothly now that we have the ceiling pretty much set and the walls are going to be going in soon. We definitely want to make sure everything is running properly. Feels nice to be getting 2 things done simultaneously. The next day, we jumped right back into the garden and I started bringing up the rough cut lumber planks, which I opted to use this year since I don't know the fate of the garden long term. Ideally, you'd want to use a wood like cedar that's more durable and less prone to rot, but again, this setup will potentially only be for this specific season. The forest here is shady and dense with many high-reaching pines, so working with the limited space provided to have any sort of garden, I have 2 beds oriented north to south so they can get tons of sun, and one facing east to west, which still really gets a good amount of warm light in its position. There's also an old water tank I'm going to clean out and use for a drip irrigation system, but it was in the way for the build, so I had to move it and begin draining what's left of the mucky water, and then I could move on to some initial flattening of the ground since the area was really uneven and I want the beds to be sturdy and level. And during that time, Kyle was working on bringing his vision of a stone staircase for the garden to life, and I started using a few old trees from the property to craft some stakes for the corners of the beds, just to really secure them into the ground and strengthen their hold for when the soil goes in. These beds will be 8 feet by 4 feet. When building, you want to consider that you have to be able to reach in from each side to access your vegetables or whatever you end up growing when harvest time comes, and also to prune or remove weeds without stepping on the soil and other plants. So keeping the width within your reaching distance is a pretty important factor. I just went for it on constructing the beds, which I actually often prefer doing when tackling something because I get to become more creative and work through problem solving as I eventually optimize the process and nail down my system. So, of course, the first bed did take a while, but it was all just so blissful being able to work with my hands to bring something from ideation to execution. Yes. Beautiful.
I'm so excited for the pathways between them. Like, I would love wood chips would be good, but I love that blue gravel everywhere would be like from the steps, and it's just like. But now that we've built it, it's like it's all we need. It's perfect. Yeah. It's gonna be plenty.
And it just makes it more fun to be here too.
It does. It really brings it to life just to build things from scratch. Like,
we need to put like rocks or something along here because this is eroding.
Yeah.
And it's gonna get washed
put
out.
Rocks on the inside. But the fabric would also help.
Yeah. Day 3 was also extremely hot and sunny, and I got right into the beds again, developing more of that process along the way. And that was also the day that Kyle started installing the gate, which is an old red wooden one that belonged to his mother for so many years prior. We grew some peas up it last year at the office, but it is so neat to see it get yet another use.
Alright, so it's gonna be here. We probably want it. Or should it be up here?
How is it opening?
Usually a gate would open there. Perfectly level.
And you can only work so long in that sun before totally burning out. So we took a much needed break and went down to the river, and beyond just cooling my body off, that water always resets my mental state and gives me such an energy boost. I swear I used to be so skittish around freezing water, but now I constantly am craving it. I think it's just the combination of the rush it gives me and overcoming that mental challenge. Well, not under it, but... Alright. I need more steaks, too. 3 more steaks.
Huh?
I need to make 3 more steaks, too. I've been doing 22 inches for each one.
You want me to make you steaks?
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, if you're up for it.
I don't know how big to make the fence post, because fence is 48 inches. It's going to go in the ground at least. I don't know if we'll be able to get it in 6 inches, maybe.
Well, you could always chainsaw the top off if you need to.
55.
You know?
Yeah.
I didn't want to block off this daffodil, but
But you had to.
I don't have to. I could go.
Well, you can't just build a fence around one daffodil.
What? What do you mean?
You can't determine the whole fate of the garden fence because of one daffodil.
Well, it doesn't. I'm trying to figure out where would be the best for the fence.
You're figuring out what's best for the daffodil.
No.
In the same way that I made the stakes, Kyle made fence posts with old trees from the property, and I'm honestly loving how they look and how they blend so seamlessly into the landscape. and then the fabric went down. Raised beds typically have warmer and very well draining soil as they are elevated from the ground in their own container, so they do require a good flow of water, and I've been nervous about some washout over time, so this will help keep everything retained. It also plays into preventing weeds, though some weeds will be inevitable just as different seeds land in the dirt and so on and so forth. The fabric also somewhat helps keep digging animals from getting in via the ground underneath the beds, though it's never a full guarantee. And yes, there are pros and cons to whatever you choose to do, but this year I am going to try this method out. What it does is help retain water and spread it to it over time. And it also breaks up the texture of the really dense soil so the roots can spread easily. For a soil blend, I combined compost and some peat moss and vermiculite and just hand mixed it all, getting it evenly distributed. And it was so bizarre seeing those beds fill up. Really not long ago, this whole area was just an overlooked bank with tangly raspberry bushes, and just watching how you can completely transform a space is always so captivating. And I genuinely loved getting my hands in that dirt and feeling the different textures and creating a nice space for the seedlings where they'll be so happy and grow all summer long.
No, obviously. I mean, we're so close, it would be impossible not to.
I guess next one, put it on this.
Hole too. Might as well. Cut that thing, use that, fill this in so it's totally level. That'll be nice. I just would love to have chickens here.
I know. They just live, or no, they eat the garden.
Yeah, I just realized. Garden. This is so nice. And then we could just overlook the whole garden.
Then the day came where we would put the fence up, so I started digging into the dirt so that the fence could go below the ground surface to again deter digging animals, and breaking up that rooty, rocky soil was no joke. We've also left a lot of space around the beds for some future additions I have in mind, and some fabric plant bags as well. The wire fencing that we used was so tricky to work with, and we learned that very quickly because it would snap back at us anytime we let go or cut it, or it slipped a little bit, and it did slice us a few times before we got our steps and systems in place. But now we can say that blood, sweat, and tears really went into this garden. And as daunting as it seemed at the time, we promised ourselves we wouldn't leave that night until all of the fencing was in place, and we stuck to that.
How far?
It's only at 100. Wait, it's not straight. It's not straight.
It's okay.
No. got it on this side.
But it is so much fun.
Wow.
We also put some on the back of the gate, and I may make a stone-filled fabric draft stopper in the future to insert in the bottom opening, just for when we aren't here. But for now, we let some of the wire overhang and bent it a little bit, so there's not much of a gap between it and the ground. It does make opening the door a little hard, but again, it's just temporary. The weather today has been so much cooler and windier than the past couple of days, which is actually so nice because when it gets super hot, I can just get so lethargic, I feel like, when I'm working. Today we're continuing to do more outdoor work. It feels like we're running out of time with when we can get the seedlings into the garden and have a successful season this year. So I need to put some rocks at the base of the fence where we have about a 6-inch trench. This won't completely resolve the issue of digging rodents and other animals with getting into the garden, but it will help. We're also eventually going to install some solar-powered devices that emit frequencies that the animals won't like. And we have a few other things planned too for different animals to keep them away from the garden. It's been scaring me so bad to think about everything getting eaten, and layering those rocks will make it so I can use less compost to level out the garden floor. I've been taking them from our little fill pile that's been building up as we dig more things and have different projects, and also foraging some from the land. And I even found this pile of really old bricks that have been working so great too. Also, that soil around the garden is so compact and entangled with different roots of different sizes. So I think it would be pretty miserable for any of the animals if they tried to dig through that to get into the garden. I know it's not some insane way to keep things out, but at least we have some stuff working in our favor. And honestly, it's been pretty exhausting lugging a bunch of pails of bricks and rocks over to the garden, and there were a few times I really wanted to stop. I try really hard to not lift with my back, but sometimes it feels inevitable. But all this hard work plays into making the end result so much more rewarding, and I'll feel so much more connected with everything. And like I said, we really need to get things into the soil, so that has been very motivating, and I have to keep pushing through. Also today, Kyle and I have really been noticing how lush and thick and leafy everything is in the forest and up in the canopies and on the ground. It's so beautiful and so saturated with color, and there's flowers in bloom and insects and different bugs and animals all over the place. Kyle's been getting a few more plants into the ground too, which he loves doing. That's like his happy place, and they all look so healthy and vibrant. So after he wraps that up, we're gonna work on the garden more together. I don't know how much we'll accomplish today, but we're gonna keep going, and feels sort of like little steps at a time. But looking back on this place just about a week ago, it's totally transformed. It'd be so much easier if we lived here, but we don't, so we come up here when we can. But by the end of this week, I think things are gonna look even more different for sure. The breeze feels so amazing. I bought way too much compost for what I needed for the garden, so I'm going to use this to fill in along the edges and fill in the cracks and get the ground more flat in the garden. But it is exhausting. Here we go.
Wait, but we had to put stone?
I thought we were putting the rocks on top of the dirt for the outside one. as like a border, you know?
Oh, I see. Well, yeah.
We did, so we're doing our best.
Yeah.
This is all left over from when Kyle was building this stone staircase. So I'm gonna just get it out of the way. We wanna pretty much bury the rocks on both sides, and we're gonna have to level this bank out a little bit more. Then we're gonna lay more stones, just big ones, along the external perimeter. It's gonna look so good. Just gotta keep going. Whew. Two times in a row.